Hello again and welcome to another Mordian Glory 140k video. In today's episode, we shall be casting our ever critical eye over another Imperial Guard 10th edition datasheet. This time, we're going over to the Artillery Corps, but rather than pounding people into dust with Earthshaker shells, we are going to be drowning them in our endless rocket fire. It's time to take a look at the Manticore. I've been using Manticore since the start of 10th, and let me tell you, they're a real spicy meatball. You're definitely going to want to consider some Manticores for your artillery pool if you don't already have some. I know, that's a pretty hype thing to say, so without further ado, let's not mess around any further. Let's shatter their skies and dive right into today's episode. As is tradition, let us begin with a brief overview of what the hell this unit actually is. The Manticore is one of the principal artillery pieces available to the Imperial Guard. But what makes it stand out from the crowd, what separates it from the Basilisks, the Medusas, the Colossus of the world, is rather than firing shells at the opponents, it launches rockets. That's right, it is one of the few rocket artillery pieces available in the Guard. But what does this actually mean on the tabletop? Well, let's get into the Manticore's datasheet and we'll begin with the stat line. To start off, we've got a movement value of 10 inches. That's pretty standard issue. It's the same that nearly all tracked Guard vehicles have. Now, the Manticore is based on the Chimera chassis, so it comes with a 3+ save and 11 wounds, just like most other vehicles that are based on that chassis. The big difference is it's toughness 10, not toughness 9. This means that melter guns that are like trying to drop down and deep strike and blow your artillery up in the backfield, they're winning it on 5s, not 4s. If someone hits you with autocannons, they're wounding you on 5s, not 4s. Toughness 10 is quite a big deal, and it means that the enemy is going to need to use proper high-strength anti-tank to crack open the Manticore. On top of this, it makes you more resilient to counter battery fire. I find that most artillery in 10th edition, not all, but most, caps out at about strength 10. If you were using a Basilisk, it means that you're more likely to get wounded on 3s and 4s. But with the Manticore, if someone's trying to counter battery fire you, at best, they're probably going to be wounding you on 4s. And for a lot of stuff, they're going to be wounding you on 5s. You've then got a leadership value of 7, which is the same for nearly every Guard unit, and an objective control of 3, which is not to be underestimated. If you have a pair of Manticores, or a Manticore and another artillery piece sat on a backfield objective, and someone, again, tries to deep strike down, or charge you, or get onto your home objective with a small elite unit, where each model only has 1 OC, well, if someone charges you a little 5-man squad like that, they're not actually going to take you off the objective. So having OC3 and being able to stack that up with a couple of vehicles on a primary home objective does make it a little bit more difficult for your opponent to take that off you. But it's not just about the Manticore's defense stat line. Frankly, the main reason we're taking this thing is to do damage to our opponent. And so now let's get into the weapons and war gear. Each Manticore is equipped with a heavy bolter and Storm Eagle rockets and armored tracks, and you can replace the heavy bolter with a heavy flamer, and you can equip the model with a hunter killer missile. Importantly, this is one of the few Guard vehicles where you can't strap a Storm Bolter or a Heavy Stubber to it. So no Heavy Stubber or Storm Bolter here. You do get the Hunter Killer though. Interestingly, when it comes down to deciding whether to take the Heavy Bolter or the Heavy Flamer on the Manticore, both have their merits. You see, the Manticore is going to be firing indirectly most of the time, and we'll get into that when we are looking at the Storm Eagle rockets in a moment. So the Heavy Bolter doesn't always come into play. Often it's just going to be chilling. But with your Manticore hiding out of line of sight, your opponent, one way of dealing with them is to charge in and try and tie you up. Now, your Heavy Flamer won't be able to overwatch. It probably won't be able to see if you're hiding out of line of sight. But if the enemy does make into contact with you, having that Heavy Flamer is going to be much more useful for trying to clear the enemy off your hull than Heavy Bolter. Heavy Bolter will be hitting on 5s, and it's only got 3 shots. So you might get like a hit. The Heavy Flamer, it automatically hits. And so if you have a couple of Manticores again, a couple of artillery pieces again, on an objective, and your opponent tries to tie them up with just a shattered remnant unit, maybe a few light infantry, if you've got flamers on there, you might be able to clear them off with the flamers and then fire the Storm Eagle rockets, and you're having a great time. So I see arguments for both heavy flamers and heavy bolters to be put on your artillery. It really comes down to personal preference, and it comes down to your local meta. Do you often find your artillery getting tied up? That's one of the ways your opponents have to deal with them. Go for the heavy flamer. Other than that, I think the heavy bolter is the more take-all-comers choice. But let's move on to the weapon profiles rather than the loadouts. And the heavy bolter, heavy flame hunter missile, same as you can find anywhere else in the guard. They've got the same range, attacks, all that kind of good stuff. The main star of the show here is the Storm Eagle rockets, and this is the number one reason why you're taking this vehicle. In terms of special rules, they've got blast, heavy, and indirect fire. They've got a 120-inch range. So on a normal 60-inch by 44-inch size board, you aren't ever going to have to measure the range. The Manticore is always in range. The only time it really comes up is in Apocalypse. So 120-inch range, you're good. You're good. You don't need to measure that. It fires D6 plus 1 shots, but obviously with blast, that can go up a bit more. Its ballistic skill is 4+. Its strength is 10, which is chunky. That's on the upper end of artillery strengths in 10th. It's also got AP -2, which is really good. And it's damage 3, flat damage 3. So the Manticore really is good at targeting anything. D6 plus 1 shots means that with blast, means that you can throw this thing into infantry and you've got enough volume there to get the job done. Strength 10 means that all but the heaviest of super heavy infantry is going to get wounded on 2s. AP -2 means that even when you're firing this thing indirect and the enemy is getting their cover save, with the -2, it means that you're still taking a pip of armor off them. So even Space Marines sat in cover, getting hit by Manticore, are going to get kicked down to a 4-up save. And with that flat damage 3, every single one that you get through is just going to splat someone. Whether it's a Terminator, a Marine, or a Terminator, anything, damage 3 is going to splat almost any infantry. The only exceptions to this are going to be very heavy infantry equipped with storm shields and other things that give them +1 to wound. What I really like about this profile, though, is it's not just anti-infantry. You can yeet this thing into tanks as well. Strength 10 means that you can threaten all medium armor and you're going to be wounding it on 3s or 4s. I find Manticores very, very effective into Eldar vehicles. They're basically all toughness 9, so your Manticores just wound them on 3s. And then the fact that it's damage 3 means that, in my experience, when you're shooting an enemy vehicle, you only need to get 4 Manticore wounds through to knock it out. Most vehicles are going to have 12 or less wounds. It's not until you start getting into proper tanks where you start seeing 13 or more wounds. And again, this is really good for counter battery fire because a lot of artillery pieces and artillery vehicles are either 6 or 10 or 11 wounds, and so being able to just slam rounds into them and a couple of Manticore shells taking out a fixed artillery piece, or 4 of them being able to take out a vehicle artillery piece, it's really good. Now the Manticore probably isn't going to do that on its own, but a brace of Manticores, a pair of them with decent shots, a bit of support, should be able to take out an enemy artillery or vehicle or small sort of 5 or 6 man squad of medium infantry a turn, no problem. Attention guardsmen, this is an announcement by the Departamento Munitorum. Element Games is an official sponsor of the Mordianglory channel. They offer up to 20% off Warhammer 40k and 10% off Bolt Action and other game systems. Use the link down in the description to save money and support the channel. Anyone not using the link will be referred to the local commissariat. Also, don't forget that if you use referral code TIM3921, then you will receive double store credit, saving even more money on your future purchases. That's all for now. Fallout! On top of this, the Manticore has a very tasty ability. Furious Barrage. Each time this model makes an attack with its Storm Eagle rockets that targets an enemy unit that contains 5 or more models, you can reroll the hit. Not reroll ones, reroll the hit. This means that you can reroll all of your misses. So if, let's say you roll the dice for Storm Eagle rockets, you roll a 3, you get +1 for it being D6 plus 1 shots. You're shooting a unit of 5-man Space Marines. Because of Blast, you then get another +1 because there's 5 models in that unit. So now you've gone up from rolling a 3 on 5 shots, and now those 5 shots have full rerolls to hit. You roll your dice, let's say you get 3 hits and you get a 1 and a 2, you can reroll both a 1 and a 2. It's really good because not only does it help make up for the less shots that the Manticore has, because it does have less when you compare it to something like a Basilisk, which is D6 plus 3 and also gets, Blast. It makes up the fact that it's got less shots by making sure that those shots hit more reliably. The only downside of Furious Barrage is it doesn't work on vehicles. Because of this, I feel the Manticore, it kind of leans the same way a lot of artillery does, where it's more focused on dealing with infantry and it's more supplementary firepower when dealing with vehicles. If the Manticore could get 4 rolls to wound against 4 rolls to hit against models which have got 5 wounds or more, so it's either 5 models or a single model with 5 wounds or more, I think that would really make it a complete take all comers unit. But because its Furious Barrage ability only works against infantry, I think it's okay versus vehicles. It can do the vehicle stuff. If your Lehman Russ or Rogal Dawn or your las cannons don't quite finish a vehicle off, you can put a Manticore in there and have a good chance of getting the job done. But in terms of targeting fresh units, I think the Manticore really is more of an infantry killer. But let's be clear, I don't really have any quibbles for Furious Barrage. It's a fantastic ability. It's just a straight up damage boost, and when you're taking a Manticore, you want to do damage. And that's really the main way you want to be thinking about this thing. Unlike other artillery like the Basilisk, which doesn't actually need to kill anything to do its job, it can slow people down with the Earthshakers, the Manticore is there to hurt your opponent. Look at everything on that datasheet. It's more durable, it's more powerful, it's got better damage, its ability is all about giving you more damage. It's a killer. That's what this unit does. And so, in many ways, it makes it quite easy for newer players to get to grips with the Manticore. It's not like other artillery pieces or other units where you have to think, oh, is it a force multiplier or anything like that? No. If you're a new guard player and you're thinking which artillery piece I should get my hands on, I'm just trying to learn the game, the Manticore is probably the newbie friendly one. And that's not to detract from newer players or to detract from the Manticore. It's one of its greatest strengths is how single-minded it is, how focused it is. You take it, it does damage. You don't need to worry about the big tactical or strategic implications of including one in your list and how it combines with X, Y, and Z. Nope. You take it, you shoot at the enemy, it hurts the enemy, job done. The only tiny fly in the ointment when it comes to the Manticore is its points cost. As of the time of recording, and bear in mind this is before the January points update that are coming out, Manticore comes in at 150 points. It's had a couple of price increases from other points of dates. Now, 150 points makes it one of the most expensive artillery pieces that you're likely to see in your guard army. There are other ones, like wacky ones like the Praetor and the Colossus, but they're Forge World, and we'll put those to one side for a moment. In terms of classic models, ones that people are likely to encounter, the Manticore is the most expensive one. And it is good. And at 150 points, I would say it's worth it. It's just about worth it. It's maybe slightly overcosted, but it's worth it. If the Manticore was to go up any more in points, even if it's to go up to like 160 points, it would become a lot less easy to justify it in a list. In my opinion, the Manticore probably, it might really seem like a small amount, but I think the Manticore probably needs to go down by 5 or 10 points. With it being 150 points, the problem is that it's starting to muscle into the territory of Lehman Russes. You can take a Lehman Russ Eradicator and that costs you 160 points. It's only 10 points more. You can take a Lemurus Vanquisher. And whilst the Manticore does do indirect fire, which is unbelievably important because it can shoot at the enemy without the enemy shooting at it, which is great, it doesn't have the same firepower. Even a Lemurus Vanquisher or a Lemurus Eradicator is going to do more damage because they've got all the sponsor weapons, they've got the hull weapons, they've got the main cannon, and they've also got the Hunter Killer and the Heavy Stubber, and they're more durable as well. If the Manticore was to go up to like 160 points, honestly, you'd probably be better off taking a Lemurus Eradicator, presuming that stays at the same points, putting it strategic reserve, and using it as some weird and wacky pseudo indirect fire thing where you bring it in turn 2. Because the main reason you take things like artillery is to kind of target those units you can't see. If your opponent puts like 10 Gretchen on a backfield objective, you use things like Manticores and Basilisks and other artillery to clear those off, and so your opponent has to put something more substantial on his home objective. But if you could do the same thing with an Eradicator that you just put into reserve and it just trundles on and just blows up the enemy unit handing on objective, see what I mean? So my point is the Manticore is worth it at 150 points. It's slightly overcosted, but it is worth it. If it gets any more expensive, I feel like you're going to find people just leaning way more into taking Russes rather than Manticores, and the indirect fire they are going to take is just going to be the dirt cheap options, things like your mortars. That's really where the attention is going to go. But I guess we'll have to see. And as always, this is just like my opinion, man. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. I can wholeheartedly recommend the Manticore, but what is your preferred artillery piece? And if the points were to change around the Manticore, do you think it should go up, down, or stay about the same? If you've enjoyed today's video, don't forget to smash that like button. It's such a simple thing, yet it massively boosts this video, and it really, really does help out. Also, if you want to see more content like this, then subscribe to never miss an episode. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian Glory Hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing, truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full time without the incredible and generous support of my members, so thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, and they have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a big shout out to Bon Bon Vert, Mad Larkin, Marcus Roberts, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Varney. Thank you guys so much. Your incredible generosity is a massive part of how I'm able to do Mordian Glory full time, and it is a big driving force behind the channel. But I hope you all enjoyed today's video. Thank you for watching, and of course, as always, I'll see you guys next time.